microphone, please. Welcome everyone. Thank you for bearing with us there for a couple of minutes while we admitted everyone into the meeting. Quite a big crowd coming in tonight. There's about 40 of us so far. A few more coming in. So thank you all for coming along and giving up a bit of time to come and hear Richard. Like I said, we will be recording tonight's event. It will be available on our YouTube channel and in our library archive. Don't worry, your names and faces won't be part of that recording, so you don't have to hide yourself. But if you feel strongly about it, you can turn your camera off. But I'm sure Richard and myself would both love to see your faces. If you would like our optimum experience tonight, I would suggest you go to the top right-hand corner. Go to the top right-hand corner in Zoom, and you'll see a little button up there called View if you're on a desktop. And if you change that to Speaker View, that will just change the camera then between myself and Richard as we're chatting. So whoever's speaking at the time will appear on your screen. So I'd like to officially welcome you all to this Linenhall Library event. My name is Scott Edgar. I'm the Assistant Arts and Cultural Programmer at the Linenhall Library. I've only been with the library for just over a month now. Started when the lockdown restrictions ended, and that's to allow my colleague Jason time to work on centenary and partition events. So I'll be working on plenty more events like this. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the library, we're the oldest such institution in Belfast, dating back to 1788. It's the only library in Ireland that generates a proportion of our income from our members. And if you'd like to find out more about becoming a member or anything like that, please visit the website where you booked your tickets for tonight, and you can find out more about that there. For now, like I say, I'll place everyone on mute. If you have any questions or comments or anything throughout the evening, you can type them into the chat box, and we'll hopefully get a chance to look at some of those later on. So yeah, Linenhall Library, one of our largest collections is our Northern Ireland political collection. It's tens of thousands of documents, tell the story of turbulent times in Belfast and beyond. And tonight, our guest, Richard O'Raw, is a former Republican prisoner who has experienced many of the realities of the Troubles as a younger man. Of course, the Linenhall Library is also a place where we have a great selection of fictional works. And tonight we'll be mainly talking about Richard's debut novel, Northern Heist. That'll be our main focus for this evening. So we'll cover politics, conflict, novel writing, and if time allows us, maybe even a story about Johnny Depp. Richard's a man with a great way of words, and he's promised me this morning when we had a chat that this will be anything but boring. So Richard, let's get straight in. I am seeing... is everyone still seeing me? I'm seeing someone else's screen here, and
I'm seeing you. You see me?
I cannot see you, Richard, but just give me
I never touched the screen. I don't know what's happening. Wait a second.
You're all right, Richard. It's just me that I think is seeing.
Is there anything I need to do?
There we go. No, I've got you back now. Can everyone else see and hear Richard okay? Drop me a wee message in the chat box if you can't. So yeah, technical issues aside, as always, Richard, let's get straight in. Northern Heist, it's your first novel, but it's not your first published book. So where did it all begin for Richard, the author?
Well, it all began with a book called Blanket Men. And Blanket Men was the result. I need to go back a wee bit. I was in prison. I was in Long during the 1981 hunger strike. I was actually the PRO of the Republican prisoners. And so I was aware of the backdrop communications between a Republican, some people from the Republican movement who were talking to the British government through an intermediary called the Mountain Cleaner, and I was aware that there had been an offer after 4 men died, and that offer had been accepted by the prison leadership, but it was rejected by those on the outside who were running the hunger strike. So I was, and then as a consequence of that rejection, and different circumstances, it wasn't just as clear cut as that, but different circumstances, another 6 people died on hunger strike. So I was very upset with it all. I mean, and when I found myself as the years went on getting worse, mentally getting worse. And then in 2001, I was interviewed for the Boston College tapes, which was an art for the Boston College archive. Ed Maloney and some people from Boston College had decided to open up an oral history bureau. So I was interviewed for it, and during the interviews, I got 10. During the final interview, I told the interviewer about the events that occurred in July 1981 and about this offer, which was a top secret. There was only about 4, maybe 5 Republicans in Ireland knew about it. And I broke down. I was in an awful state. I mean, it truthfully was. It was like a water tap. And the whole idea of Boston was that when we were all dead, it would be released. It would be released, certainly when we all died anyway. And I just, something in me said, no, I'm not bloody well waiting to I'm dead. I want people to answer for this now. I want the truth out there now. So literally the next day, I set about writing Blanket Men. And it came to fruition. This was in 2001, 2002, and it was published in March 2005. And it caused mayhem within Republican circles because I was revealing something of a magnitude of a huge eruption, and I all of a sudden became persona non grata. Friends who I had known for life weren't speaking to me. There was rumors circulating all around the place about me and my person. I was being disparaged all over the place, and my daughter in fact was abused as well by grown men who should have known better. The whole thing was awful. I was ostracized within nobody was speaking to me, virtually nobody. So that was the price that I paid, and that ended up a 10-year battle with some Republicans who were trying to play down what I was saying, and it didn't work. I had a story, and I couldn't deviate from the story because there was no deviation, because what I was saying was right, and I had nowhere else to go except the truth. And eventually, various papers came out, the Thatcher papers, Ben Duddy papers, and we actually, in the Thatcher papers, it shows you her in her own handwriting amending an offer that came into the prison. So. And then it died. But that was my introduction to writing. And as a consequence of Blanket Men, I needed a second hunger strike book to follow it up to reinforce what I said the first time. So I then wrote Afterlives, and it was released 5 years after Blanket Men in 2010. And again, the battle was on again. And in the heat of all this here, my friend came back from England. My friend was Jerry Conlon of the Guildford Four, and Jerry had been my lifelong friend. We lived next door to each other, well across the street. I lived in number 6. We lived in 16th Street down the Falls, and he lived in number 17th Street. So he and I were best friends. He'd been on a trajectory since his release from England, which was chaotic, which was dramatic, and which had left him very, very badly emotionally scarred. So he came back, and he and I became just friendship just started up again. And we were walking. We used to go for breakfast at least once a week, and we would have picked somewhere out, and we would have went down and had a fry, and we would have talked about any other thing that came in their heads. We were good friends. We could talk about anything. I mean, we could talk in confidence and know that it wouldn't go any further. Deep things. And one day we had I don't know where we actually were for the fry, but we were walking up Royal Avenue, and he stopped and he said, and he just sort of grabbed me by the arm, and he says, "I want you to do me a favour." And I says, "What?" He says, "I want you to write my life story." And I found this incredulous because Jerry had written his own biography, right? And he'd also had a film made about him called In the Name of the Father, in which Daniel Day-Lewis played Jerry, which was very, very successful. So as far as I was concerned, he'd been well documented. And I said that to him. I said, "Jerry, what do you want me to write about? You've already been well done." And Proved Innocent was the name of his book. And he says, "No, no, 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 no." He says, "I'm not going to curse, but he says, I effing well haven't been done. My life never started until I got out of prison. That's where the real story is." And I didn't really know the real story, to be honest, Scott, because he was living in England all those years. I mean, he only came back to Ireland roughly about 2007 after his mother died, Sarah. So, and he says, "I want you to promise me you'll do it." I had other stuff. I was writing other stuff by this stage. And I had already started, to be truthful, I'd already started Northern Heist, and I was enjoying writing it because it was a novel. I wasn't relying on other people, and it was all coming purely out of my own psyche, my own head, and I was enjoying it. And I said, "Jerry, I have other stuff on, and I was also doing some stuff for Northern Ireland Screen." And but I made him the promise anyway. And I said to him, "It's just going to be down the lane." He says, "No, no problem. As long as you're going to do it." Little did we know that Jerry, in fact, had about 5 or 6 months left to live. And actually, I got a phone call one day out of the blue from his sister Anne, and she says, "Jerry wants to see you." I says, "Well, I'll nip down and see him now in his flat, Davis." And she says, "No, Richie, he's in hospital." I says, "When did he go in?" She said, "Yesterday." I says, "What with?" She says, "He's very bad." "Bad with what?" "He's riddled with cancer. He's 2 weeks to live." So it was very awful. I went down to see him, and he was buoyant, you know. He was buoyant as you could probably be, and he said to me, "You made me a promise that you'd write my book." I says, "And I'll keep it." He says, "That's okay." And we had a lovely visit. And as I was walking out, he shouted out, "I love you." And I can't really talk about Jerry without getting emotional. I'm sorry. But anyway, I got out and I put Northern Heist aside, and I started researching his book. And I started, first guy that I interviewed was Paddy Hill of the Birmingham Six, who was a great friend of Jerry's. And then I interviewed Anne, his sister. I interviewed Shane McGowan out of the Pogues, Shane's sister Siobhan, a whole plethora of people who Jerry had met along the way. People in Glasgow. I met a lovely guy down in Plymouth. He was a good friend of Jerry's, and he was very, very helpful, giving me all sorts of assistance. I met all these people, and I put the book together, and in 2013, I think, we released it. And we were very fortunate because, as you said, Johnny Depp, Shane McGowan's sister said to me, "Why don't you ask Johnny Depp to write the foreword?" Johnny Depp, she says, "You may do it." I mean, Jerry was very, very thick. So she gave me his email address. I sent away the email, never heard nothing for 2 weeks. I just never give it any more thought. It's over. And then an email arrays in and says that, Ricky, it's Johnny Depp here. I would be an honour. Straight down, forward, and did. And it was fantastic writing. And I mean, I was so appreciative. And even the stories that I heard that Anne told me about Johnny Depp and Jerry were fantastic. But I was delighted with that. And then once I had that book out of the way, I got back to Northern Heist. I'm bubbling on here. I'm sorry. Do you want
to? It's absolutely fine.
Okay. Well, you know, I got back to Northern Heist, and I got the first draft done, and I sent it to my agent, and he loved it, and we sent it out. And the protagonist of Northern Heist is a guy called Ruxians O'Hare. And in the first draft, Ruxians died in the end. And the book was rejected left, right, and centre. And I mean, that's part of the game. You're ready, you're going to get rejections all over the place. You need to get used to it. I was used to it. But I was sitting with my daughter one day. We were actually sitting down the Duke of York. And I was having a pint, and my daughter doesn't drink. She's having a lemonade or something. And we were talking about it, and we were perplexed why it wasn't getting picked up, because we knew the story was great. Well, the story itself is great because it's the Northern Bank robbery. From a dramatic point of view, it's very, very vivid. And then she said to me, "Do you know why it's getting rejected? You killed Ruxians." And here's me. Jesus, you're so right. So I went back to the drawing board and rewrote it. Rewrote the third part of the book, and Ruxians survived, and we sent it away. The first person we sent it to was Conor Graham from Merriam Press, and he jumped on it. Absolutely.
Is Ruxians based on anyone in particular?
He's based on a couple of people, right? Who I met along the way. People who are particularly agile on their feet, let's put it like that, who would be able to think very, very quickly in any given situation. There's about 2 or 3 different guys who would fit that bill, who I met when I was in the Republican movement. And so he's not actually based on any one individual, but there's 2 or 3 guys there who I sort of way drew from, who could have been the Russians if they had taken another road.
And just for anyone who maybe doesn't know the full story of the Northern Bank robbery, could you give us just a little quick synopsis of what the book's about? Obviously without spoiling it or giving away the end or anything, but just for those who might not know.
Well, it's a novelist's view of take on a potential Northern Bank scenario. I created a criminal family called the O'Hares, who lived up the Hamilstown on a big farm, and they were a criminal family all their days. They were known criminals. They were doing all the things that criminals do. They were selling illegal cigarettes. They were doing all of that stuff that generates money for criminals. They were robbing banks. They loved robbing banks. And the head of the family was a guy called Panzer O'Hare. Panzer being a German tank, and tank being the strength. I needed him to be strong and to be seen to be strong. So that's why I gave him the name Panzer O'Hare. And his nephew was James Ruxians O'Hare. Ruxians was actually the go-get man, the guy who makes things happen. But he's the utmost respect for Panzer, and Panzer was recognized as the boss. And Ruxians came up with this idea. He had always been looking for the big move, the big job, as all criminals really are. They love the thought of the one big job, put it off, and that's you finished. You don't need to risk your liberty anymore or whatever. And he came up with this move, this robbery. Let's not just run into a bank and jump over the counter and grab the money, get a few thousand quid, and make a dice for it. Let's take everything out of the bank. Let's take every pound note out of it. So he came up with this very elaborate scheme, which translated into the Northern Bank robbery, and he marshalled the whole thing. But as always, these things, there's always hiccups. There's always barriers. There's always scenarios that you have to overcome. One of the scenarios was that the IRA would have been looking 50% of any money that was stolen, and this was in the early 2000s, and they were getting that sort of money. They were taxing criminals, and Russians doesn't want to give them any money, right? So therein lies a conflict. On top of that, there is all sorts of not minor stuff, but the police have a sort of a hint that something big's going down, and they are keeping their eye on the likely suspects. So the robbery goes ahead, and just as it did in real life, and the ball bearing upon which everything revolved was the young bank employee bringing out the £1 million in the Manchester United bag. The two bank robbers, their families were held hostage by the robbers, right? And the two bank employees were given phones, were told, go you into work tomorrow, pretend there's nothing happening, and follow the instructions that we give you with the phone. So at lunchtime, one of them was told, put £1 million, fill up they give them a big Manchester United bag, fill it up with money, £100 untraceable notes. That's what he did. And you've seen him on TV, and sure, he walks out of the bank with the overall over his shoulder, walks up to the corner, sits at the bus stop. Guy comes along, takes in the book instructions, takes the money and walks away. And in that instance, the robbers know that the bank's wide open, and they bring down a huge van. They tell the two employees, bring up on trolleys all the money in the bank. So they bring up four trolleys. Trolleys are loaded into the van. The van drives away with £17.5 million, and then the absolute audacity of them, they come back and they fill it up again, and they take away another 10 or 12 million pounds. And that was the essence of the robbery, and that was the essence of the first part of the book. It's only the first part of the book. The book is a lot more intricate than that. The IRA realised they've been duped. They are far from happy. The cops are hot on the tail of Russians. He has to get the money. He has to get the money laundered. And there's a French connection with that. And in the meantime, the only reason he was able to do the bank was that he had groomed a bank employee's wife, and had a relationship with her, and she gave him the information that he needed in relation to shifts, etc. So the whole thing goes along at a terrific pace, and it ends up. Well, I'm not going to tell you how it ends up. It ends up in different courtrooms. One is the High Court in Belfast, where Russians is on trial for robbing the bank, and the other one is an IRA court down in County Meath or somewhere, where the main IRA guy who's chasing Russians has been charged with bringing the Republican movement into disrepute. So I'm not going to tell you the ending, right? But that's the sort of stuff that's in it. It's very fast, and I mean, one of the things that was important for me when I was writing it was to show that this was far from a victimless crime. There were people badly hurt here. There was a lady taken away and hidden in a cottage for over 24 hours, blindfolded, totally distraught. And she was very badly affected by the whole thing. And there was a young lad called Chris Ward, totally innocent young man, who ended up being charged with this robbery. Now, he was acquitted, but he had to go through the trauma of a trial, and so there's no. I mean, if the book proves anything, it shows that there is no such thing as a victimless crime. There are always people hurt, even if they're not shot, even if they're not physically beaten, they're emotionally hurt. I have no doubt that that lady to this day is still very traumatized by that robbery.
And all of these things are obviously fact. So how much would you say in the book is fact? What we were able to see on the news, and how much comes from the mind of Richard O'Raw?
70% of it comes from Richard O'Raw. I mean, the whole story, the only factual part of it is the actual robbery, how the robbery occurred. The rest of it's all make believe. The rest of it all came out of my head. And I have to say, it was one of the most pleasant experiences I've ever had in my life, because you could sit down at a computer and you could literally go anywhere you want, and create any character you want. I mean, when I created Russians, I just said, what a guy. I mean, he's fantastic. He's a criminal. He could be ruthless. But in terms of a book, in terms of drama, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And I enjoyed. I prefer reading fiction now to factual books. So I'm reading a factual book at the minute, but I prefer reading fiction. It's more liberating, for want of a better word.
You're enjoying that creativity. Are there any plans for a sequel? Might this become a series of books, or what's next in the pipeline?
Well, there's a sequel now. There was an offer for it. Northern Heist is sailing high in America at the minute. It's doing very, very well. It's getting rave reviews. Got a rave review from the Wall Street Journal, amongst others. So it's selling well in America, and there's a sequel to it that I've written. We had an offer on it. My agent had an offer, so I leave all that to her, and we hope to have the sequel out next year. It's called Gurion's Gold, as in Herman Gurion, and it's another heavily charged, hold on to your seat sort of read, because and I loved writing it. I absolutely loved writing it. I can't tell you the story, but Gurion's Gold almost tells you what the progress. It's a money chase. They're looking for the money. Everyone's looking for the money. Neo-Nazis and Russians and everybody else and police. And it's great. I think it's a great deal. But then I think everything I read's great.
I think everything I've heard from you so far has been a great yarn. So we had a bit of a chat earlier today in the library, and I know obviously your friendship with Jerry meant a lot, and got quite emotional talking about him. But you were telling me that you've also worked on a play.
We had myself and Martin Lynch. Martin came to me about two years ago maybe, and he sent for me, and I know Martin from before the Troubles, and he said to me, I read the Conlon book in The Name of the Sun, and he says, what a story. I says, I am very happy with it, Martin. He says, it would make a fantastic play. And I think it's a fantastic movie in it. It's a great human interest story. And so we sat down and we had lunch, and he says, I would like to write a play, but me and you. And I says, okay. And he never got back to me, and I never really given any more thought. And about 4 months later, sent for me again. He says, let's do this. So we sat down day after day. We actually used the book as the prototype, and we sat down in Europa day after day, went through chapter after chapter, and he was on his computer, and we started putting the dialogue in for the play, and what a great time. We laughed our heads off, and And because Jerry's life was so traumatic, Jerry, when he got out of prison, done £1 million in. He got a huge lump of money from the government. He got, I think it was 200,000 or 300,000 quid for the film in the name of the father, and he got a good sum of money for his book, Proved Innocent. So he got £1 million and he done it in. He done it in virtually a year, and most of it went in cocaine. Jerry couldn't cope with life on the outside. Hadn't a clue what to do. Hadn't a clue really. Well, he was good in terms of human rights. He was a great advocate for the Birmingham Six, but he hadn't a clue how to handle life. He couldn't barely walk across a road. He was terrified, and he was traumatized terribly by the fact that his father had died in prison. His father had also been charged with as an accessory to the Guildford bomb. His father only went over to London to try and get him a solicitor, and he ended up getting sentenced to 14 years. And his father died in prison, and Jerry blamed himself for it. So he blamed himself all his life for it. So he progressed from ordinary cocaine to crack cocaine, and had a very, very bad habit. And he left London. He was skint. He was actually eating out of bins. Him and girlfriend and a couple of other guys were really living really bad. And so he knew he had to get out of London. He got out of London. He went down to Plymouth. That's why I even said it was over in Plymouth. He went down to Plymouth, and he went cold turkey. And it took him 6 years, but he got off crack cocaine. And he came back to Ireland, and that's when he and I started connecting again. And he was brilliant. And then he found out when he came back to Ireland, he was contacted by an old girlfriend who told him that he had an 18-year-old daughter who he knew nothing about, who was studying law at Queen's. So he was thrilled with that. He told me about that. He was thrilled with that. And he started getting back and fighting for the human rights. He was fighting for human rights for the Aborigines, for the Native Americans. He was fighting against capital punishment in America, and particularly in Florida. He was doing all sorts of work across Europe, etc. And he was back to his old self. He was a bit of a crusader, and people would have come to him looking. He got letters from all over the world looking for assistance, and he was back doing what he was good at. And then he got hit with the cancer. But that's a great story, and there's great. It was booked into the lyric for 2 weeks, and it was supposed to start the first night. It was a sellout. The first night that I was on was the night that we closed down for COVID. I think it was February 2020. COVID closed down and Lyric closed down, and so the show didn't go on. But as far as I'm led to believe, the first 2 weeks in November, it's back again. So all being well, if the COVID doesn't run that again, it should be on in November. It's a great show.
So everybody keep an eye out for the Lyric Theatre listings for November, and hopefully we'll get to see that. You talked there about how these stories are so packed with drama, and especially something like Northern Heist. There's just so much going on and so much speed. Any ambitions to make that a play, a film, a TV series?
Well, at the minute, it has been taken up by a major London production company who seem to be very confident that they can make a 3-part television series out of it, but they're talking about a franchise on Ructions. They are really taken with this character, and we're very optimistic that it will take off. It is, the common theme amongst the critics was that it was made for the big screen. Now that's easier said than done, because a book can look like it's destined for the big screen and not get there. But the guy who's taking it on now, the two guys who's taking it on now have been around a long, long time, and they're heavy hitters. So we're pretty confident that it'll go, and we hopefully be seeing it shortly.
Just for a bit of fun, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who would you like to see playing Ructions on the big screen?
And they're trying to get Fassbender. Michael Fassbender would be a perfect Ructions. He would be. There's a film that I like Fassbender because he's an unbelievable actor. He's a fantastic actor. But I always find it when I watch Fassbender, there was always a wee hint of devilment in him, and his acting, no matter how good he is in the thing, there's always a sort of menace. And he, in my view, he would make the perfect Ructions. And I think that they're trying to do a deal with Michael to come in and play Ructions.
And I think his mother's from here, isn't she? So we should be able to get the accent right.
Oh well, he's Irish, isn't he? I think he's Irish. I mean,
half Irish, half German, maybe.
Okay. I don't know. But I think it would be great for it. It's tailor-made for him.
He would. So
if you're listening to this, Michael, get on the team.
Drop a wee message to Johnny Depp, see if he can put a word in.
JD might be able to pull something off.
So listen, we have covered a lot of ground this evening. This chat has been almost as fast paced as the novel itself. Gonna throw it open now to maybe a couple of questions. There's been a few kind of comments and things come in there, but if anybody's got any questions, you can just pop them into the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. And Richard did promise me earlier that he would pretty much answer anything, and in fact told me that a certain well-known journalist put him on the spot on Radio Ulster with a question. Do we want to go into that one?
Oh, why not? I mean, it was talkback, and it was Crawley, and he was introducing Northern Heist, and he introduced the whole story of how these guys got away with. I have 32 million in the book, and he said Richard O'Raw, an ex-IRA bank robber, who, I mean, I'm very, very vocal in being anti-violence and stuff, right? Very vocal. So he went into all that there, and he says, an IRA bank robber, and at the end of it, he says, one question, Ricky, what'd you do with the dough? Right? And my reply was, what's his first name?
William,
have you any idea how much he got us these days? Have you any idea how much an island on the Caribbean is the Indian Ocean? So with a great laugh. I mean, he's a great character. Crowley's a great character in his own right,
And as we can see from the background there, you haven't quite made it to the yacht in the Caribbean yet. So
no, definitely not. I haven't even been there yet.
But hopefully, if the book keeps selling well, you'll get a few steps closer to it.
Well, you never know. Maybe get a cruise. Wouldn't it be nice? Huh?
So, has anybody else got any questions for Richard or anything? If anyone's read the book, any comments on it? See, it's not often that a crowd of people from around Belfast are this shy.
No, but No, I have to say, I enjoyed reading it. Loved reading it, in fact, and it was nice. It was nice getting it away, and it's even nicer when it went to America. I mean, we didn't actually send it to America. The American publisher was handed it per chance. I said to him, "There's a book. Want to have a read of that? It's a good read." So he got the book, and bump, he was in right away. Straight on to my publisher in Ireland and says, I'd like to publish this in the States. and you never look back from it. I've done these things in LA and Cincinnati and New York and all over the place, and you know, I mean, it went very, very well.
Okay, I think we had a question in there from Anne. I saw her raising her hand, so I'll just take you off mute, Anne.
Just to congratulate Richard. It's a very enjoyable presentation, and you've still kept your humour despite all that you've been through. I just enjoyed your mention of ructions. It's a long time since I've even heard the name, and it brings back lots of memories. So thank you very much, Richard.
And it's a pleasure. Well, as you say, ructions, I mean, I'm 67 now. Ructions was the name, a term that my mother would have used.
Exactly, yeah.
He's causing ructions, or if you were a kid and your wee brother was playing up, he's causing ructions, stab him, you know. So
there'll be ructions tonight if you haven't done what you were told to do.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's it. And ructions, you were in real trouble. So it was just something that I said, you know, that would be a great name for someone.
It's a real Belfast name, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. The Americans didn't know what ructions. They'd never heard it. They'd never heard of it before. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, when I'm doing these things in America, it's ructions this and it's ructions that. You know what I mean? It's good crack.
Exactly. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your question.
We have another question coming in here from Sean. Let's see. Just take you off mute there, Sean.
Hi, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Not too bad. Listen, I was fascinated that we're talking about the sort of the genre that you seem to be moving into. Is you found your strength in mainly picking up factual stories. You just mentioned there this Goring's Gold thing. I'm assuming that's going to be a wee bit of licensing going on there, whereby you've discovered everyone. I'm looking for the gold too, by the way. We're all looking for that gold. I presume you're adding a 70%. You said there are 70% fiction and 30% fact, and that you seem to like. You seem to be able to be comfortable about basing stuff around factual stuff. You know, it's like I call it the Jason and the Argonaut movie, whereby it's sort of based on Odysseus's way home from Troy. Yeah. And I think that's the genre. Would I be right in saying that you see yourself basing it in, because you did mention fact and documentary, whereby perhaps you see a future in basing stuff around old stories and reinventing them in relation to the Goring's Gold, the Heist. It's based on fact, but also you get a bit of licensing. You find a bit of freedom as a writer to be able to add the 70%, which means, do you see that's where you're going? And when you were doing that, was there a great road to Damascus when you realized, fuck, I'm actually better at sort of, I'm good at this. I found do you get what I'm saying, Rich?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think you're right. You're absolutely right. The Goring's Gold thing is around, obviously, Hermann Goering at the end of the Second World War was arrested, but there's talk that there's over £1 billion in gold bullion that he was aware of. So I based the whole thing around this £1 billion and how it's going to be found, and there's a whole chase, and the neo-Nazis believe that they're entitled to it, and I couldn't go into it, Sean, because if I said anything, it would blow it, right? But it's a great story. Yes, you're right. I love that stuff, right? And if there's I think that the more intricate the story in terms of fact, right? I took something out of Goring's Gold. I took something out of Hermann Goering. Hermann Goering, for example, if you ever seen him on television, is never without his baton. He's always got his general's baton with him, right? And it struck me that this baton could be important in a story, and it is. It is actually the fulcrum, it is the center point of how you would discover this guy's money, this guy's sort of lure where the money is, or where the gold is, the gold bullion is. So I took that and I expanded on that, and I brought in Russians. I brought the same guys in again, Russians and Serge and the guys out of Northern Heist. And I brought the IRA into it. The IRA found out about this gold bullion. The neo-Nazis find out that this baton is important, right? The IRA finds out about it, and it ends up Interpol, the IRA, neo-Nazis, right? They're all chasing Russians because he has it. He has the baton, and he doesn't know yet its significance, but he knows it is significant, right? And so the baton opens up Aladdin's cave in a sort of metaphoric sense. So that's what that is, you know, and I started another novel called The Witchfinder General. The Witchfinder General was a character in Civil War England who went around Sussex hanging and burning witches. And I have reinvented him and brought him back to life. It was just something that I don't know where it came from, but he's there anyway, and that's what I'm writing at the minute. I'm actually doing rewrites, and it needs tightened up. It's like all of these things, Sean. You get a first draft, and then there's about 40 drafts after it before you get it into the shape that you're happy with. So that's what I'm doing with the Witchfinder General at the minute. And I mean, but I love it. I mean, I would have a drink once a week, Friday night, and I would sit at that computer with a nice bottle of red wine and 2 tins of Tannins, and I'd be as happy as a pig in the you know what, and just right away and have a great time.
Well, before you give away any more spoilers for your upcoming books, I've got one last question for you, and it's from an old friend of yours, I think. John, I am just going to ask you to unmute.
That's it done. Can you hear me, Richard?
Oh, John, how are you?
How are you?
How are you doing? Me
Richard,
and this guy here played basketball together for Ulster.
Richard, I put this in the chat, so I've been upgraded to a personal presentation to you. Richard, I'm really interested what made you decide to take to writing. But I also want you to ask the answer for me. Do you think Mr. Smith, our old English teacher, would be surprised?
I would say be very surprised, John. So you know it. He was a nice guy, so he was a lovely fella. But it was a sort of, as I said, it was like a fluke sort of a thing. I was the PRO of the Republican prisoners during the hunger strike, as you know. So I was doing a fair bit of writing then. And Bobby Sands, I mean, I was in the wing with Bobby, and we had it was like a writing factory where we were writing little communications and smuggling them outside. So you get into the habit of writing. And then when I got out of prison, I went into business, and it didn't really go into writing. But the whole thing started with Blanket Man and my urge to get that story out, and I just was. And I just felt that nobody else would be able to convey it the way I could, because I lived it. So that was really the impetus. And then I realized I like this. This is a nice. This is a habit. It's a habit, for want of a better word, but it's a nice habit. So then I had to write the second hunger strike book to back up the first one. So I was into it, and by that stage, I was dealing on and off in Northern Ireland Screen and screenplays. Now, I was writing screenplays and they're submitting them, and we were trying to get them off the ground. It's not easy. And then again, Jerry approached me, and I told him I would write his book. And in the meantime, I had this idea about the Northern Bank robbery. It's actually my daughter, Joan, to come off with it. Again, Bizarre Burnett said to me, we're down the town, and she said to me, we're talking about it, and she says, that would make a great story. And that was the sort of idea, but it was a sort of a fluke more than anything. I mean, I never sat down and said I'm going to be a writer or I'm going to be a novelist. It's a sort of a progression more than anything, and it's a very healthy one. It's a good one, you know. How are you doing?
Doing grand, thank you very much. Yeah.
Are you enjoying your retirement?
I'm enjoying. Well, I was retired for a while, then I got a few things to do.
Oh, well, sure, that's the way it goes. John, good to see you.
God bless.
God bless, mate.
Well, John and everyone else here will have a bit of time on their hands now and plenty of books by Richard O'Raw to pick up and read, fictional and non-fictional. Where can people get a copy of Northern Heist if they haven't already got one?
You can get it in Waterstones. You can get it on Google. And I mean, there's a hard copy. The American people, the American publishers put it out in hard copy. So I mean, it's easily got. Just go on to Google and you'll get it no problem. And it's worth reading some of the reviews. They're very, very good. If I say so myself. As you can see, I'm the shy type.
And nothing changes, yeah.
That's it, John. That's it.
Always good to end things with you bigging yourself up there, Richard.
Wow.
I would just like to say thank you very much for joining us this evening. We've almost hit the hour mark, and it's been an absolute pleasure. This has been one of the most interesting events that I've run so far.
It was my pleasure talking to you and everyone else, and thanks for the questions. And you too, John. It was lovely seeing you.
And you, my friend.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant.
I've abandoned your book now. I've only read 2 of your books, so.
Yeah. Well, the Conlon book's fantastic.
Okay.
I'll say so myself.
And as well as Richard, I'd like to thank everybody else who registered and came along and gave up a bit of their time this evening. I hope you've all really enjoyed it. We couldn't run these events without your support. So on that, when you get a chance tonight or tomorrow, if you head over to Linenhall Library or linenhall.com, the Linenhall Library website, check out what events we have coming up, find out how you can become a member, sign up for things, follow us on social media and all that. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, Richard, and hope you all have a great night.
Brilliant, Scott. Thanks so much. See you guys. John, good luck.